It really is my privilege to be here today with you. Many of you know that I have a husband that you may know or you may have heard of, but and you know a lot about him, but maybe you don't know as much about me. So I'll introduce myself a little bit here. Like my husband, I grew up in rural Utah. I grew up in Mount Pleasant, Utah, on a 600-acre ranch with my 9 siblings, and we learned a lot of things, and one of them was to work really, really, really hard. I felt like I was pretty picked on, being 5 of 10. Being the traditional middle child, I had to do a lot to be seen. So I caused my parents a lot of grief. But also in that house, in that beautiful farmhouse in east of Mount Pleasant, there was only one shower. So I also had to be very innovative and very quick, and I'm pretty good at getting up early so that I can get the hot shower. We used to spend, I did a lot of sports in high school. We all of us played sports, and what you realize in rural Utah, maybe you don't realize what I'll tell you, is that in rural Utah, when you play sports, you're not going down to a school 30 minutes away. You're usually on a bus trip for several hours. And when you have animals at home and you have responsibilities, it's not a matter of just taking off and coming back. When you get back, those chores are waiting for you. So I did learn a lot about responsibility and taking care of the things that I've been assigned. I also learned some real life lessons. When I was a kid, my dad had this, I talked about my grandpa up in Syracuse. They used to race quarter horses. When we moved to the ranch, I was the first one born there in Mount Pleasant. They brought one of my grandpa's most prized quarter horse, purebred quarter horse, and she was amazing, but we wanted more like her, and so we kept trying to breed her, and finally she gets this colt that lives, and she's beautiful and she's fabulous, and my dad decides to break her himself. And it was amazing because he put his heart and soul into this horse, and we loved her. And one day I was a young teenager, and she got really sick. So my dad rushed her to the vet. She had colic. She had to got her back and thought she'd be okay. My dad said, "Abby, I need you to run out and feed her before you go to bed." It was cold. It was dark. I had to clear down to the barn. And I decided I didn't really want to do that. And so I just kind of wandered around a little bit, came back in, said, "Okay, I'm done. I'm going to bed." The next morning I get up, and we go out there, and this horse is dead. And for a long time, I thought this was my fault. I was responsible. This is a huge consequence. I later learned it wasn't my fault. But for a long time, I understood, and I still understand, that power of responsibility and making sure that we take care of our responsibilities. I also learned humility. There's something very uniquely humbling about tromping through a corral full of knee-deep manure. You can't help but be a little humble when you're doing something like that on the farm. When I was in middle school, my dad got really sick with an autoimmune disease, and my mom went back to work for the first time in my lifetime, and she was a middle school math teacher, my middle school math teacher. So that was a challenging time for us, but we learned as a family that we are all in this together. And that's another critically important lesson that I learned on the farm. Today, as First Lady, I am using every one of these lessons that I've learned. And I just want to tell you a little bit more about what we're doing. I love the theme of this conference. I love the theme of resilience and growth. Our current reality is defined by one word: uncertainty. This word, which dominates current headlines and global conversations, sums up the air of abstraction and mystery surrounding the global pandemic and its toll that it's had on each of us. We have all felt stretched and tired and sometimes hopeless as we've worked to problem solve and pivot again and again within our own spheres. We've felt overwhelming feelings of powerlessness. We've wondered, how do we approach a challenge when we've never seen anything like this before? How do we overcome what we don't even know the scope of? For me, it's meant campaigning during a pandemic. We pivoted again and again, and we gave much of the responsibility for the campaign to others, since we had to focus on the health and well-being of the state and our family. It meant being mama to a missionary who was serving in Tahiti and had to come home and be reassigned. It meant I had kids back from college, like many of you, in our home again and trying to figure out what homeschool means. It meant watching my husband, who thrives on his ability to solve the most complex problems, come home each night exhausted and often feeling defeated, but willing to get up and get back to it every day. Most of you were creating teleworking protocols, updating policies and procedures, changing the way you serve, and thousands more details that maybe you never even had to think about before. And thinking constantly of your family's health and education. As business leaders, you were faced with important decisions, all the while trying to keep up with the decisions that were being made by others that affect you, and taking care of your families, and keeping the whole economy afloat. That's no joke. The last nearly 2 years have required all of us to have more resilience than we ever knew we had within us. We are realizing now how important resilience for ourselves, but especially for our children. We have to model this for our children. Think about what our children in this state have observed during this pandemic. I wish I could say that it was mostly good. I don't know. I think, were we showing them how to be resilient? Or were we just showing them how to insult and belittle someone from the opposite political tribe as us on social media? Some of the world's brightest minds have for decades pondered about resilience and shared insights with us, particularly like the thought from, I love this from Nelson Mandela, "Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell and got back up again." And from Winston Churchill, "This is no time for ease and comfort. It's a time to dare and endure." And my favorite, Eleanor Roosevelt says, You gain strength, courage, and confidence from every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. I think we can all feel that we've lived through this horror and we're ready. We're more resilient than we've ever been. I love that Janae talked about showing up. So let me talk to you a little bit about our journey the last 9 months. I have a background in special education. I have a degree in special education with an emphasis in early childhood and severe from Utah State University. I spent time with children with disabilities who taught me amazing and powerful lessons of connection and unconditional love. They taught me how to get proximate. So when I became First Lady, I knew I wanted to do something meaningful. I always say, no fluff. That's what I'm about. That's the rural girl in me. And I knew I wanted to do something in education and with kids that have different abilities. So our team set out to listen. We tried to figure out for a long time, many months, we listened to people in this space that were doing amazing things, and we wanted to make sure that we knew what the needs were in our community. We decided with our partners how we were going to endeavor to make a difference. We learned so much about the community's need for connection and healing as we come out of this pandemic, and we are still in the midst of civil strife, and we are working to show true love and true understanding about the people around us who may seem different than we are. So let me talk to you about Show Up. Show Up is my First Lady's initiative. Show Up, what does it mean? Show Up is a rallying cry. It's an ask to all Utahns to be present for our children and for the students of this state. What does our state need right now? We need people to show up. We need to get back to feeling human connectedness. We need to show up for each other during a crisis. We need to show up to support each other. We need to show empathy and understanding instead of prejudice and animosity. Show up is a rallying cry to encourage Utahns everywhere to reach out and lift up and serve others. Show up is not political. We are focused on being about people and their hearts. We are all about combating our country's empathy crisis. We have adopted the motto, you can pretend to care, but you cannot pretend to show up. I think it's particularly apt, actually, for this conference about resilience. Showing up is hard sometimes. And when we've been through what we've been through, perhaps it's the best way to build resilience and get out of our own heads and comfort zones and move forward. With the initiative, we have 4 focus areas. Showing up to support Utah's foster children and families. Creating awareness of the significant need we have in our state for people to step up and foster these beautiful children, and through putting greater supports and networks around the families that choose to do so. Showing up for Utah's students and teachers through giving them access to skills like problem solving, relationship building, and self-awareness. This will include a teacher conference that we're going to be releasing information on very soon. Showing up to support opportunities for Utah students who live with different physical and intellectual disabilities by providing more access to sporting opportunities. We are doing this by partnering with the Utah Special Olympics to expand their unified sports programs, which places children of all abilities on teams together, fostering empathy and proximity. And lastly, showing up for Utahns everywhere by promoting service as an important way to have a meaningful life. And being an example of this by joining with the governor and his staff and cabinet members out in the community doing service projects. We've had remarkable experiences this year already in these 4 areas. I want to tell you a little bit more about the amazing people we've met and the stories of their resilience. First, service. I chose this because we had such incredible experiences as we traveled the state on our campaign tour to every city and town in this state. And we were with them in their communities, serving with them. This is what we've done so far in this area. We painted a mural with the spouses of the state legislatures at a local YMCA in February. We co-hosted an event at Jane.com and filled 250 backpacks for foster children in August. We filled weekend food bags for thousands of kids in Granite School District, and we did a mentoring project at the neighborhood house. What we have coming up is a big service project with Procter & Gamble and the Hispanic Star Organization, and a really cool project at Chris Kindle Mart coming up in December to benefit Utah's refugee and foster families. One of the most beautiful projects that we did on our campaign was we were in Price, Utah. There was an elementary school with 2 kids who had lost siblings to suicide. And right outside of their door, right next to their playground, each time they went out was the cemetery where their siblings were buried. And those children had to be reminded of their grief and pain every time they were out there playing in the playground. So the community came together in Price and decided to put slats, privacy slats in the fence between the playground and the cemetery. We had over 200 community members there just for those 2 kids. It was a beautiful opportunity, and it showed us how to connect as humans and how to come together as a community. The next focus area is social and emotional learning, or emotional intelligence. What is this? There's a lot of talk about what is SEL, and let me just tell you my definition. It is skills to promote students' self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship and responsible decision-making skills, eventually leading to improved student attitudes and beliefs about self, others, school, and community. We have people like you every day coming to the education community and saying, we can teach a kid how to code, we can't teach them how to work together in a group. We can't teach them how to self-manage. So this needs to be a part of the portrait of a graduate. We want our kids to excel in academics, but they need to have the emotional intelligence skills as well. It's all about empowering each of us with the practical skills to resolve our conflicts amicably, to disagree gracefully, to have greater self-awareness, and to give these students a shot at shouldering the burden the world has so forcefully heaped upon them. What we've done so far in this area is we have hosted roundtables with educators all over the state, and they came to us and said, this is what we need. We need you to help us have the skills as teachers as well. So we are really excited to have a big virtual event coming up with Dr. Mark Brackett from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence to do a virtual event with our educators. And then we will be doing a big teacher conference in July of next year to make sure that each one of our teachers has the skills they need to address their own emotional intelligence. Let me just tell you, if you don't think this is important, ask an educator. Tooele educators are using SEL to build resilience. After experiencing a traumatic series of suicides and deaths in 2015, Tooele County School District took action to support not only its students, but the whole community to move forward in healthier behavioral norms and more positive cultural and school climate. The results, 2 years after instituting multiple supports, including social and emotional learning, in a 2017 survey revealed a decrease in suicidality and substance abuse, even while other counties in the state experienced an increase. Tooele leaders and teachers took their students' emotional and mental wellness seriously and were able to build from tragedy for their students' best interest. One of the teachers said, we have seen great progress in positive school climate because these educators were resilient through the community's trials, and because they work to implement SEL as a way of life and culture, they are spreading their resilience far and wide to their students, peers, and families. The third focus area is Special Olympics Unified Sports. My life has been positively impacted by people with different abilities. Each child has taught me, in turn, each child that I taught has in turn taught me how to live, love, and face adversity with grace and dignity. What we've been doing in this field is we have been partnering with Special Olympics Utah. We've gone to their opening ceremonies. We've held a unified sports summit and brought all of our partners together to really work on how we can increase the program in every school in the state so that every child has a chance to participate. And we made a wonderful announcement, and if you haven't seen it, please look up our unified announcement that we did at Tooele Schools and Wasatch High Schools. The most beautiful thing we've done all year. We got to tell these kids that they've been invited to the USA Games in Florida. It will melt your heart. You need to watch it. And we have coming up this Saturday, and Janae is so awesome, and we have awesome sponsors like Janae helping us to put on the biggest Special Olympics Unified Sports Tournament that has ever happened in Utah in conjunction with Utah Special Olympics as well as Real Salt Lake at Rio Tinto this Saturday. We invite all of you to come and participate with us. The public is invited, and we would love to have you there. You need to experience this for yourselves. The reason I'm so passionate about this, and the reason I went into special education in the first place, is because my life was touched by 3 beautiful individuals. They came into my life when I was in 2nd grade and stayed with me all the way through high school and are still my dear friends. They have Down syndrome, and they have taught me everything that anybody would ever need to know to enjoy life and to be a beautiful soul. The 4th focus area is foster care. And I chose this because I sat and watched my friends in my neighborhood and my dear closest friends adopt 5 children, foster children at one time. And you know, if you were to have 5 kids at one time, can you imagine what the community would do for you? They would rally, right? Your neighbors, your friends. You would have baby showers, and you would have meals brought in, and you would have all these things. Did that happen for this family? No. They got 5 kids at once, and that family was largely forgotten. And so this is really important in our communities, that we foster the foster families. We help to make sure that they have what they need. We've done amazing things. We've done some really incredible events with families, and it's been beautiful. We have a foster-friendly app for businesses, if you want to be a part of that, to offer discounts to foster families. We've spent time at the Ogden Dinosaur Park. We've spent time giving free breakfast for them at Chick-fil-A. We've immersed ourselves in DCFS work so that we understand the entire system. And what we have coming up in this area, tonight, we are going to be at the Utah Shakespeare Festival, and 100 foster families are going to be able to participate in the Pirates of Penzance. It's going to be beautiful. And then tomorrow night, we have a similar event at the Tuacahn, where we have foster families coming to watch School of Rock. We are creating opportunities for our families so they feel connected, so they feel loved, and they feel like they can go forward in this work. And as a little plug, we're always looking for businesses who are willing to open their hearts to these best families in the state. So if you have ideas or you want to partner with us, please reach out. I want to tell you about an incredible, resilient person that I met a few months ago. Her name is Jacoya. And she entered foster care when she was 11 years old. She moved around many, many times and had so much trauma in her life. She aged out of the system without being adopted at age 18. She had many struggles, as you can imagine, and she turned to drug addiction, and she was lost. There was one caring adult that she remembered, and she reached out at her lowest point to talk to that person that had been a caring person in her life. And she pulled herself out, and with the help of those around her, she was able to get out of her addiction. She was able to go to college and graduate from the University of Utah in social work, all while she was raising her beautiful daughter. And now, Jacoya is a caseworker for DCFS, helping kids just like herself. And she's doing a remarkable job. This is what she said. I don't think I truly understood the meaning of family until I had my daughter. I want her to know that I never gave up. I never gave up. I went through a lot. I never want her to take on any of my trauma, but I want her to know that I am resilient, and she is resilient. Would that we could all be more like Jacoya. It's true, there is nothing scarier than not knowing. When we lack control over a situation and there's no clear path forward, we still have to go forward in strength. Diving into uncertainty and weathering the storm may be the only option, and still, we overcome. Resilience can turn into the most amazing growth, and I hope you will take the time to think seriously about what you can do in your roles as business leaders to foster those that you employ, serve, and teach. Because Jacoya was resilient, because our educators are resilient, because our foster families and our foster children are resilient, because our kids with disabilities are resilient, we can be too. We can be the example for those around us. In conclusion, I just am going to ask you to do something. Because of who you are and because of who we are as Utahns, and because as business leaders, you have the opportunity to build resilience in our communities almost more than any other group of people. And that ask is to show up. Be engaged and aware of what's going on in your community. Encourage your employees to do more for those that are struggling. And be an example of this for them. Set aside time for them to give back if you aren't already. Also, find things that you're passionate about to give back in whatever ways make sense to you. And as Utah's leaders, get proximate in your communities. Listen to someone that has a different story or a different point of view than you do. And if you don't have any ideas of how to do this or what to do, oh boy, I sure do. So I'd like to engage you with more resilience and more connectedness as Utah moves forward. Being the First Lady has already been an honor of a lifetime. And if you'd like to follow along on what we're doing, you can find us at Show Up Utah on Instagram, Twitter. Our website is showuputah.org. And we have a podcast called First Lady and Friends, and we would love to have you take a listen and join us in whatever ways you possibly can.